They sent 300 people to essentially a dungeon, a gulag in El Salvador, and ostensibly because they were all members of a gang, a criminal terrorist gang. We have no way of knowing if that's actually true because their only methodology seems to be like tattoos.
One of our goons saw a tattoo on his arm.
We will only hear, and it will take a while, and we probably won't hear from all of them, from people who had full-on legal status. Because it's possible there were people on those planes who were not here, were here without documents. Maybe they overstayed their visa. Maybe they came into the country, their parents took them, or maybe they came across the border without documents. We will not hear from them because their families or their friends who may also be undocumented they're terrified. They're not going to come forward.
They don't want to shine a spotlight on themselves.
100%.
We're seeing this when it is with healthcare, with hospitals. This is the way that the government makes a group of people go underground. And so when we hear stories of this, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 stories of like this, you can be sure that there was a lot more people who weren't what they say. And that's the problem with the failure of due process. Here's Jesse Waters hand-waving this away. The idea that we claim, and here's the thing, they've got to claim that these people are in a gang to sell it politically. So who they are is obviously important, but you cannot determine who they are unless there is some type of official process which determines that. And what we call the legal term is due process. Yeah.
It's not in the way that we use it in the vernacular.
You can't take away people's due process like that. And I don't trust the El Salvadorian government to be making sure that they're not torturing people, that they're vetting them properly. They need to be vetted on this side.
Democrats always say.
All right, pause it for 1 second. I just want to say something. We say, as a shorthand, it's a person's due process. It is not a person's due process. It is a person's right to go through due process. That's a very subtle but important distinction because the due process is supposed to exist regardless of whether there's people to go through it or not.
Yeah.
The due process exists in the same way that our laws exist. They exist whether there's people breaking them or not. Due process exists. It is the way that we adjudicate things.
It's the bedrock of our judiciary, and it's constitutionally enshrined.
People, that they're vetting them properly. They need to be vetted on this side.
Democrats always say this could happen.
It did happen. It didn't could
They're
happen.
torturing them?
Did you watch the video?
Torturing.
Yeah. Did you read the Time magazine?
Heads.
Time magazine was there when the gay barber from Venezuela who had a crown tattoo that said "Mom" was being processed coming into the El Salvadorian. Oh, am I boring you again? I'm sorry.
No, but you've been talking about this gay barber from El Salvador with some stupid tattoo for weeks.
Yeah.
Weeks, Jessica.
Come on.
It's just a gay barber.
He's not into you.
He's an innocent guy who got swept up in a deportation, and hopefully we get it figured out and straightened out. But a lot of people in this country, Jessica, get arrested for things that they didn't do, get falsely accused, falsely convicted.
I'm also against racial profiling.
That doesn't mean you just stop arresting people. That doesn't mean you stop arresting criminals because one guy was arrested who was innocent.
Okay, all right. We don't need to hear any more.
Wow.
The reason why he knows that innocent people get arrested all the time is because of due process. Because they get arrested, then they go through due process and we find out they're innocent. This guy has already received the punishment, and it might as well be capital punishment. To that end, The Atlantic reported yesterday, in the case of a father of a 5-year-old disabled child,
Abrego Garcia.
he is here legally.
came to the
came
US
to
when
this
he was,
country.
yeah, a teenager.
Because he was fleeing in 2011 gang threats in El Salvador. He received in 2019 protected legal status from a U.S. immigration judge. In other words, he went through the process, who found he would likely be targeted by gangs if deported back. That's what asylum's for. He was scooped up by ICE because of a supposed clerical error. And of course, there was no due process, so there was no assessment of there was no way to catch that clerical error. On March 12th, Abrego Garcia picked up his son after work from the boy's grandmother's house when ICE officers stopped the car, saying his protected status had changed. Officers waited for Abrego's wife to come to the scene to take care of the boy and then drove him away in handcuffs. A couple of months later, he is sent to El Salvador. In Monday's court filing, attorneys for the government admitted that the Salvadoran man, this being Garcia, had been deported accidentally. And here's the kicker that speaks to what Waters is saying. Although ICE was aware of his protection from removal from El Salvador, Abrego Garcia was removed to El Salvador because of an administrative error, the government told the court. Trump lawyers said the court has no ability to bring Abrego Garcia back now that he's in Salvadoran custody.
They have no ability. They can stage a photo op in that El Salvador prison with the shaved heads of hundreds of men, which included innocent people that were rounded up without due process.
Who cares what those identity of those men are? Just put him in a cage.
They can do that.
They are now
but they
saying
can't bring him back to his family.
It's too late.
You know what would have prevented it from being too late? If he had his due process and this was able to be delineated. Do we have this J.D. Vance tweet about this? He really thought he owned the liberal media here, responding to John Favreau of Pod Save America, who said, any comment on this at Marco Rubio? How about you at J.D. Vance? You just admitted to accidentally sending an innocent father from Maryland to a torture. It's cut off here, but you get the gist. Vance responds, my comment is that according to the court document you apparently didn't read, he was a convicted MS-13 gang member with no legal right to be here. My further comment is that it's gross to get fired up about gang members getting deported when ignoring citizens they victimize. Next slide is the actual court filing, which completely contradicts what J.D. Vance was saying there.
Which says that he was accused at one point of being a member of MS-13, but because he got his due process back then, they found out. In fact, he was cleared of that.
Right. An informant had essentially fingered him as somebody who could have been a gang member, and there were no charges filed.
And you can't necessarily take, I've just been on one grand jury duty session. You can't necessarily take the word of informants as face value. Typically, they want other evidence than one guy that works on the payroll, the cop saying, yeah, him.
They're incentivized to give information. It's the same arguments that were used against the Bush administration's use of torture during the war on terror. Information that's given under duress is not always reliable. And also the lack of reliability increases in many ways.
Did he just do this? Did he just add?
No, this was yesterday, but this guy, Brian Metzger, who I think is with Business Insider, I'm not sure. Okay. Yeah, Business Insider. So he tweeted that going after the reporter who had tweeted out the filing, and then immediately realized, FYI, I edited this post because I mistakenly believed the determination from the immigration judge had been made in 2021. Whoops, no, that wasn't correct. Edited the original post because 2019, when this determination was made, was during the Trump admin, not the Biden admin. None of this matters. He wasn't convicted of a crime like you initially said.
Oh, but he was implying that the reason why the guy got off from being MS-13 was because of Biden, and then had to remember that, oh wait, Trump was president.
Right. Oof. Yeah. This is also, I really want to note that gang databases and gang affiliations have been used to further mass incarceration in this country for quite a while. It's, in 2016, I think it was Oregon that did away with their gang database because despite having less than 8% of their population being black at the time, 64% of people in the database were black. And you see this across a variety of different states where it's used to elevate charges against poor people and marginalized communities by saying they have gang ties. And it's very difficult to determine how they get on one, how they get off of one. And throughout this like tough on crime, broken windows policing period of our history, this was used over and over and over again. So you see how our policies at home are now, and honestly, the militarization of our police force that escalated a lot of this in the wake of 9/11, where they got all this excess military equipment and the surveillance state expanded. They're using these same tactics that they've used against many Americans and applying that to justify the disappearances of innocent people and bragging about it, where they say, there's nothing we can do. That's Stephen Miller. That's Stephen Miller basically going like,
here's the DOJ.
Suck on this.
In their filing, the DOJ says there is no jurisdiction in habeas. Plaintiffs admit, as they must, that the United States does not have custody over Abrego Garcia. They acknowledge that there may be difficult questions of redressability in this case, reflecting their recognition that defendants don't have the power to produce Garcia from CCOT in El Salvador. But even more, they concede that Garcia is not in defendant's custody. Essentially, they're saying, like, we dropped him off already. There's nothing we can do. The government, we can't be compelled to have this guy show up because we don't have him.
There was nothing they could do when the plane was already in the air and the judge ordered that the plane turn around. Hey, the plane's already in the air. Oh, now this guy's innocent? Well, there's nothing we can't do. Can't bring him back.
They all had a problem with the judge overruling the military plane.
Right.
These people are ghouls.
I mean, they're fascists, right? They are fascists. This is a fascist administration. And on this issue, there is no question. They are disappearing people at this moment.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.